All right, welcome back, everybody, to the KC Sports Report, and welcome back to a Chiefs post-game live stream. I know this live stream is coming at you a little bit late. I had the opportunity to work this game, so I was driving back from Arrowhead Stadium last night, and if you guys follow Josh Fan, which I'm pretty sure that most of you do, you probably saw that I was on his live stream from the Arrowhead Stadium parking lot, but I wanted to take the time to get back on this channel, give my thoughts and reactions to the game. As you know, I was at the game because I had to work it. But it was very interesting. And I would argue that that was one of the most raucous environments that Arrowhead has seen in a long time. It might be the most. But, let's get back on it. The Chiefs won this game over the Las Vegas Raiders by a final score of 30-29. This was a game in which the Chiefs were down by 17, and they were able to climb all the way back, at one point being up by, I think it was 9 or 10. The Raiders made it close, and it was a really good game down the stretch. But that doesn't mean that there wasn't their fair share of controversy. There was a lot of officiating, questionable decisions that were made. The refs were not very good last night for either side. The Chris Jones roughing the passer, in my opinion, is one of the worst calls in the history of the NFL. Like last week when that call for Tom Brady went on his side with the whole roughing the passer thing, that was bad. But this Chris Jones one was even worse. Somehow tackling the quarterback in the modern NFL is seen as roughing the passer, which I don't understand. To this day, I still think that that was a clean hit and a clean tackle, because what more do you want Chris Jones to do? Chris Jones is like 300 pounds. He's the biggest human being I've ever seen in person. And if he's running full speed at you, he's not just going to be able to stop and land like comfortably or just not land with all of his body weight, because that's not physics. That's not how that works. Chris Jones did nothing wrong on that play, but then Raiders fans come back and say that holding on the field goal that Matthew Wright ended up missing, and it gave the Chiefs a first down in the fourth quarter, really hurt them. And I think that that wasn't a great call, but the officiating was bad all night long. There was some roughing the passer calls on Mahomes that didn't get called, but I still think that this game, we kind of saw an even matchup. The Raiders, for as well as they played in the beginning, they really failed to continue that down the stretch. The Chiefs started off really poorly on offense, but, I was really never worried, because the Chiefs have shown countless times that they don't have a problem coming back from a deficit. 17 points for most teams is a death sentence. That is a deficit that you just know you cannot come back from. That was not the case. When the Chiefs went down 17-0, I look at my coworker and I'm like, yeah, guys, it'll be fine. Like, that's just a couple good drives sustained. And if you can do that, you're going to be back in the ballgame. And they came back in the blink of an eye. I mean, Travis Kelce, guys. Travis Kelce had 25 receiving yards off of 7 receptions, but 7 of those receptions, 4 of them were touchdowns. Travis Kelce had 4 touchdowns and only 25 receiving yards off of 7 receptions, which is absolutely nutty. It doesn't make any sense. But yet again, the Chiefs were able to prevail because they have Patrick Mahomes, the best quarterback on the planet, and Travis Kelce's a Raider killer. It doesn't even matter that he had a pretty bad game receiving standards, but he was in the red zone. He was the go-to guy when Patrick Mahomes needed to find somebody for a touchdown. And all of those touchdowns came from Travis Kelce via Patrick Mahomes. Lucas Murphy, I see that you're in the chat. If you want, I'll post the link. If you want to hop in on this conversation, you are more than welcome to, my friend. I kind of want to tell a little bit of a story about my experience with the Chiefs yesterday. So I got to go down on the field for the Pyro team pregame. So when all the players are running out, I was basically there, because once that is over, it's our job to get that stuff off the field. And I'm standing there, and Alex Smith is 5 feet in front of me. Literally, I am like, if Alex Smith is like right here, I'm literally like right here. That was a pretty cool moment. But I just think that, getting back to the game, the Chiefs won this game, and it wasn't necessarily an impressive performance because they lacked a lot in terms of offensive execution. The offense didn't look great yesterday, but they were good enough to get the job done. And I think it's because Mahomes was able to spread the ball out to all of his different receivers. I mean, you saw him hit Travis Kelce for 25 yards and 4 touchdowns. I'm going to get into the stats right now. Marquez Valdez-Scantling had 6 receptions for 90 yards. He had a couple really big catches yesterday. Mecole Hardman had 4 receptions for 73 yards. Juju Smith-Schuster had 3 receptions for 33 yards. Clyde Edwards-Helaire had 3 for 20. And Jarrett McKinnon had 2 for 19. So he just kind of hit a bunch of different guys. I mean, Sky Moore had 2 for 15. Noah Gray had 1 for 7. Justin Watson had 1 for 10. There wasn't a go-to guy necessarily, but they were able to get the job done. And Lucas, I just saw that you want to join. Let me copy this link and post this. Guys, I'm only going to let Lucas in. I want to hear Lucas' thoughts on the game, but let's see. All right, Lucas, hopefully you can see that. But okay, getting back to the game at hand, there was a couple things that really stuck out to me. And, the Chiefs were up at this point. They went for 2. They missed the 2-point conversion. And the Raiders missed a 2-point conversion on a touchdown pass, a beautifully thrown ball by Derek Carr. Somehow Devontae Adams caught the ball, and the Raiders had the game within 1. It was 30-29, and the Raiders decided to go for 2. Why they decided to go for 2 in that instance, I will not understand, because they should have just taken the points. But they went for 2. They didn't get it. Huge stop by the Chiefs defense. The Chiefs get the ball back with like 4 minutes left to go in the game. Fantastic. I'm thinking, okay, they can milk the clock. They can run the ball. They can get this game under wraps with like 2 first downs. That's all it's going to take. And the Chiefs just somehow failed to do that. And they ended up punting the Raiders the ball back with like 2:21 to play, still giving them the 2-minute warning, and they still had 1 timeout left. And you could kind of feel that everybody in the stadium kind of tensed up a little bit, because it just kind of felt like, oh my gosh, all they have to do is get past the 50-yard line, and their field goal kicker, Daniel Carlson, was going to be good enough to kick it from deep. And so I'm not going to lie, guys, I kind of thought the Chiefs were going to lose this game coming down the stretch, because for whatever reason, and I'm going to let Lucas in here in a minute, the Chiefs on 3rd and 3, instead of running the ball or going with some conservative play call to get the first down, extend the clock, and keep the game going, they decided to throw it deep to Mecole Hardman. That pass went incomplete, and they had to punt. That play call, if the Chiefs would have lost this game, would have been the biggest question of the entire game. I still don't understand the play call, and this is just a perfect example of, yeah, you won the game, so you can kind of ignore that. But if the Chiefs lost that game, that's all we would be talking about. And with that being said, I'm going to join to the show Lucas Murphy, a.k.a. The Beat of KC. Lucas, my man, how are you doing?
Good, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm glad to get you on here. Why don't we get into your thoughts about the game? The Chiefs trailed by 17 at one point, came rallying back. They won a nail-biter, 30-29. What are your thoughts about the game?
I kind of had some of the similar feelings you had, where like 17-point deficit, just kind of how the Raiders came about. It was like they gave everything they had in that first quarter, and they knew they had to give everything they had to get up, because we have Patrick Mahomes and this offense. And really, honestly, I can't say that I was disappointed in the defense. I mean, I still think we need some more of a pass rush, but for handling the defense how we did and how the offense kind of approached it more towards the second half, I mean, I really didn't feel nervous about this situation at all. I was happy with it. It's a in-division type of game. I mean, you expect to get the best out of the Raiders every time. And so I was really happy. I was extremely nervous, though, towards the very end. I was driving into work, and hearing Mitch Holthus call the game is completely different than hearing Troy Aikman, and Joe Buck talk about just random things. But hearing Mitch Holthus call it from his angle, it was extremely nerve-wracking. And then how it ended, man, I couldn't have been more happy.
I was there, and when I tell you that might have been the loudest I've ever heard that place, it was crazy. Like, the way the fans reacted to certain stuff, I am personally not in agreement with. Like, you can't throw beer bottles at players. You can't harass them. But man, that crowd was insane. And you could kind of see, like, the Raiders were a little bit out of shape because of it, because I don't think that Derek Carr was communicating with his wide receivers very well. I mean, you saw the frustration boil over at the end of the game with Devontae Adams, who just made that cameraman the richest guy on the planet, because I'm sure that he's going to sue and find some way to get some money from that. But yeah, I think the Raiders kind of hit their boiling point, because as I kind of said with Josh last night, imagine being up 17-0. You're against a team, you're playing a team in the Chiefs that you just can't beat. You struggled to beat them for the longest time. And that first quarter, that first 2 quarters probably felt like a culmination of all that anger and frustration that's been building up for so long. And you just stick it to them. And then in the second half, the team that just seemingly never dies comes back and beats you again by a single possession. And if I'm a Raiders fan, which a lot of them shockingly are blaming the refs, which I don't get that personally if you saw the roughing the passer call on Chris Jones, but the Raiders just had so many instances where their coach bit them in the ass. Like, why are you going for 2 when you could tie the game? Go for the tie. You're on the road. Go for the tie and then give the ball back to your offense, or have your defense make a stop, get the ball back, and kick a field goal to win the game. That's what they should have done.
I think that's the pressure that Mahomes provides, is like, we need to go for 2, even though we know we're going to tie it up. We need to go for 2 just because they have Patrick Mahomes. I mean, that honestly, that's the pressure of him. I mean, I'm sure in the back of their mind, they're thinking of, man, he drove the length of the football field with this offense, with the same guy that scored 4 touchdowns last night in a matter of seconds to tie the football game, and then they beat the Buffalo Bills last year. Like, all that stuff runs through these guys' mind. And like, so I'm sure, McDaniels is like, even if we tie this, it's not going to matter. But yeah, I mean, I to go back to your point too about being the loudest, like, when you can hear it on the radio because of how high up they are in the booth, like the glass and everything, and you can hear the crowd very loudly in the background, that's something that I think kind of went unnoticed last night, and it would be interesting to see if we truly did break that 142.2.
And I was under the concourse, and I was still like, wow, it is crazy out right now. And in the pregame, like with the skydivers, and they did a stand up to cancer moment, I had like goosebumps. It was crazy how loud it was. And, also Chiefs fans, I didn't really understand this. The barbecue tailgating culture is something that I knew it was big, but when you're trying to get in to go to work, you don't realize how truly big it is. I had to drive on the wrong side of the road to get to the employee-only entry because Chiefs fans literally were so backed up that the highway was basically, they needed to let the people in early because the freeway was backing up. Like, it was absurd. It was a Monday at like 2 o'clock.
Yeah, I got off at I've been working overnights, and I got off at 7 a.m. And they said people had, even for the late Monday night game, people had been lined up since like 4 o'clock in the morning the day before. And like, that's just insane to me. Like, you're front in line, you're starting to cook, and then the gate, like, at what point do you take a nap? You know what I mean? Like, you got to get one in there at some point. So yeah, man, that's just the dedication to Kansas City. That shows the loyalty that this fan base has for this team. And I mean, you can take it a step further, and we booed for 45 minutes because the refs missed a roughing the passer call. I mean, that just shows you how loyal we are to this team, this fan. I mean, it's just incredible.
It was definitely a surprise. And I just think that if this team, getting back to the game, if this team gets marginally better, they're still the best team in the AFC. Now, this next week is going to be a test. The Buffalo Bills are, if the Chiefs are 1, the Bills are 1A. Or if the Bills are 1, the Chiefs are 1A. It just kind of, that game could have any outcome. The Chiefs could win by 30. The Bills could win by 45. It could be a tie game. It could go into over. Who knows what that game could be? But it's going to be one of the best games of the year. And I think that winning last night was so important because A, it was a divisional game, and B, because when you're going up against a team like the Bills, having another game as cushion, having another game that you can say, okay, we handled our business at home, at least last week, it doesn't give an excuse to lose this upcoming game. But if the Chiefs were to lose, it doesn't look as bad if you lost back-to-back games at home. And I guess, would that be what? 3 out of your last 4 if you lost? So yeah, the Chiefs winning last night's game was big. And I also think that with the Chiefs winning last night's game, the Raiders season is basically over. I hate to say that, but they're 1-4 right now. We've seen crazier things happen, but in the AFC West, a team with the Chiefs who have consistently been great and the Chargers that have the talent, they just haven't figured it out yet, they are not going to have the opportunity to figure things out if they want to go to the playoffs because they don't have the amount of time left.
I would have to agree too. I think, when you're talking 1A, like 1 and 1A too, I think you're talking all of NFL too. Cause like when you look at the NFL as a whole this year, there really isn't, besides those two teams, I would say maybe the 49ers are starting to kind of sneak in there just a little bit, but there really isn't that standout team, those standout teams like the Buffalo Bills and the Chiefs, and they just so happen to be in the AFC. So this is by far, I mean, you could put this down as probably the most important game of the year up to this date. And luckily it's going to be in Arrowhead. And yeah, man, I both sides are going to have injuries. They're going to have to really compete against each other. But yeah, this is definitely going to have implications for that number 1 seed when that time comes.
And I'll tell you what, the Chiefs are going to have to get better defensively because last night, I understand Davante Adams is the best wide receiver in football. Rashad Fenton got bullied. Like, Rashad Fenton was a big mismatch going up against Davante Adams. And the DBs could have been better. The Chiefs still are better defensively this early on in the season than they have been in the Mahomes era, I would argue. But they still have to keep improving because, when you're going up against these quarterbacks like Josh Allen and the wide receiver talent like Davante Adams and Stephon Diggs, your defense is going to have to be enough equipped to fight that challenge. And I want to see if our defense can go up against Buffalo because last night they weren't bad. They got some very crucial stops, the biggest one being the 4th and 1 to end the game, but they stopped them on the 2-point conversion as well. So we've seen flashes. I just want to see the Chiefs put it all together. And I think that once you get Trent McDuffie back, that's going to be big. Once Willie Gay gets off the suspension, that's also going to be big. It's just right now they got to find a way to get it done without some of those guys. And Buffalo is a team that is capable of dropping 50 points. The Raiders are not. So I think that the defense is going to be the biggest thing to watch this next week. And last night they weren't bad, but I think that we could both agree that they left a little bit out there that you wish they would have played a little bit better.
I think their game plan like last night was designed to maybe really try to shut down Davante Adams, even though they really technically didn't. Because it seemed like they were giving the run a little bit more than they should have. I would be interested to see what their approach is going to be this coming week for the Bills with McDuffie potentially coming back. I mean, everything points that he should be coming back. Mike Dana should be coming back, hopefully. And so I wonder if, this time they might give up the run a little bit more with Singletary, Zach Moss and some of those guys, but then be more apt to trying to cover like Stephon Diggs and doubling over the top, or maybe because I really started thinking about this. Like, Watson obviously was a lot better with Adams than I would say Fenton was, and then also Fenton isn't going to be on the field as much when McDuffie comes back because Watson's proven that he can play the position. L'Jarius Sneed's not obviously going anywhere. So for me, I think how they're going to approach and how they're going to really match up with the wide receivers is going to have a huge impact. And then again, we got to get some form of pass rush outside of L'Jarius Sneed. If L'Jarius Sneed's going to lead your team in sacks, then something's clearly wrong because we invested in Karlaftis. We go out and sign Carlos Dunlap. Frank Clark, obviously, I think last night he played the best game of football I've ever seen, and then he didn't even play basically the whole second half. So for me, if Frank Clark is healthy and can provide an inkling of what he did last night, I think we have a pretty good shot. And I think that we really do. We match up well against them defensively. I'm not overly concerned. Like you said, though, they can easily snap off 50. But I think this is going to be more of like a 28, like that type of range of game.
Yeah, and really quickly, to your point, I want to give a huge props to Jalen Watson.
Yes.
Jalen Watson, man, for a seventh round draft pick, dare I say that he's the best DB the Chiefs have drafted in the later rounds in the Veach era? Like, L'Jarius Sneed is fantastic. He was a fourth round draft pick. Jalen Watson was a seventh round draft pick that has turned into a quality everyday player who's going up against some of the best wide receivers in the league. And last night, he wasn't the problem. Last night, he played really well. Granted, they kind of put Sneed on Devontae and Jalen at the same time, but Jalen Watson has been everything the Chiefs could have possibly asked for and more. He's already lived up to that draft pick. And, whatever he does for the rest of the season, I just kind of see it as icing on top of the cake. He's already proven himself, and the rest is just going to be bonus.
I
So,
think I
go
think
ahead.
too with that though, Michael, is like he is still learning. Like he
Yeah.
obviously didn't have the assets that maybe a corner from like Alabama, Tennessee, Texas has. Like he's coming from a very, very small school. So even probably some of the technology and like the education aspect of playing the position is new to him, and he's getting provided all the information. Then he's going out on the field and translating that. So like to me, that's what's the most like valuable piece, I guess, is that he's still learning to play the position at a high rate against some very talented receivers. So, man, yeah, I look forward to him just continuing to take that next step.
When you got to think about it, I would argue that it's very rare that the first cornerback taken in the draft is the best. We see a lot of the time that the really good cornerbacks come in the later rounds, and I think it's because cornerback is such a mindset position. Like you are going into the game thinking that I can be perfect 99% of the time, and if I mess up 1% of the time, if I blow one coverage, that's all anyone is going to talk about. It is a thankless job. We very rarely praise a cornerback because they're in the highlight in one section and then they're in the low light in the next because it's just such a tough position to be successful at. And for a seventh round draft pick, a kid that really has not had any NFL experience to play the way he has, it's really big. And it's one of the reasons why the Chiefs were able to move on from some of the veterans in camp because they were confident that the Chiefs had the pieces in the secondary to be okay. And last night, that Devontae Adams touchdown, you're not going to do anything about that. That was just a perfect ball and a great catch. But outside of that, I mean, Devontae Adams wasn't a guy last night that I thought killed us. He really, I mean, I guess I'll look up his stats right now, but I don't think Devontae Adams played a really good. Oh my God, he had 3 receptions for 124. So, I mean, I guess when he did catch the ball, he was solid.
Well, you got to think right out the gate, the deep bomb that put him up 7-0. Fenton got torched. I mean, literally got torched. So that immediately gave him like 70 yards. I mean, it was like 60 and some change.
So I will say I didn't see most of the first quarter because I was still working. So I,
Yeah,
I didn't see that. So that makes a lot more sense.
yeah.
But
So,
that makes sense.
happened, and then a very similar situation later on. He caught another pretty solid deep pass. I think that ended up leading to that second touchdown. So bulk bulk of his yards definitely came. I mean, he only caught 3, but yeah, most of
Yeah.
it came off of 2 really really deep balls that Fenton's blown coverage on that first one. I mean, I don't know if he slipped. I don't know if he anticipated help over the top. It kind of reminded me of like one of those where like Dan Sorensen was just nowhere to be found type of moment. So, but yeah, I mean for the way they contained him though, and then also for them to get Hunter Renfrow back and really him. I know he's kind of still coming back from an injury, but those are 2 really lethal wide receivers, and for them to not truly get off the way they probably should have. Like Adams definitely got the yardage, but he didn't get the receptions like he usually does. And Renfro definitely didn't have an impact. Darren Waller obviously had a hamstring issue. Um, but yeah, for how they kind of just maintained and controlled the game from a defensive standpoint, I have absolutely zero complaints. And again, the way the Chiefs defense kind of goes, we improve as the season goes on. Like, remember how like awful it was last year in the beginning of the year? Like people were calling for Spags' job and like this is awful. And as it got going, the season got better. they got better at probably studying film. They got better at understanding each other's roles. Some people were playing out of position still, but they got better. And like this core now, everybody's doing what they're supposed to do. They're just learning to kind of cohesively get better with each other. And man, I think this defense is going to continuously get better. You know, shutting down some of these top guys. We might be. I mean, we're looking at a really well-rounded football team.
We are. Now, one thing I will say, Josh Jacobs had 21 carries for 154 yards, averaging 7.3 yards a clip.
Yeah.
That's kind of a problem. But, I mean, bend but don't break. And last night, the Chiefs did not break. So, I mean, there's definitely positives and negatives to looking at the defense. I would say that for what was going in their direction, they played okay. There's still room for improvement, but they did the job. Now, a couple things I want to talk about before we get out of here. The offensive line, man, it's still a problem. And Orlando Brown Jr. hasn't been good. I have been on this train for the longest time. He's not worth whatever he wanted to get. And that $100 million contract that the Chiefs offered him in the offseason, he's never going to see that again. No team is going to give him that offer because so far this season, he has not been good. And Andrew Wiley had a rough night. The offensive line as a whole didn't do very well. I mean, in run blocking, they weren't bad. Jarrett McKinnon broke off a few pretty good runs, but you know, in pass protection, Max Crosby hurt the Chiefs all night.
I agree. I think for me, this is another. I mean, granted, we talk all the time how the Chiefs' offensive line, was like one of the most impactful things. How we revamped it after the Super Bowl, which we 100% did. But I think what we also are seeing is that Brett Veach is willing to do what he has to do with that offensive line to keep it going in the right direction. I mean, you have to protect literally the best quarterback in the NFL. I mean, we drafted Trey Smith. We have the best center in the NFL in Creed Humphrey. And so he has the capability of drafting very talented offensive linemen. And I wouldn't be surprised if you see that maybe being addressed very early on in this next draft. Like you said, like if Orlando Brown is thinking he's going to get that top dollar, I mean, I'm sure he's going to get paid because he's a proven commodity. But after what we've been seeing when it comes to like a full-on like attack rush, he can't handle it. He gets square, and he really just gets blown by. And so for me, I think they're like, hey, you go ahead and prove it, do your thing, but this is where we're at, and I think it's going to be in the Chiefs' favor. And yeah, I definitely think that offensive line is going to be something that they're going to address tackle-wise when it comes to the draft, maybe even in the free agent market.
I even wonder if the Chiefs are even going to extend Orlando Brown Jr. now. They might just say, you know what? Thanks for everything. You gave us 2 quality seasons. They franchise tag him and they trade him. At this point, you might just have to cut your losses because I cannot stomach the idea of the Chiefs giving Orlando Brown Jr. even like $17 million a year. Like, yeah. I don't think that he is worth that. I think that if he really wants to get paid, he should go back to right tackle because he's just not a very good left tackle. And there's still a lot of season left. He could prove us wrong, but we really need him to step up because too often last night, Mahomes got hit and he got hit hard, but hey, that's just part of the game. But
well, I mean, moving forward, he's going to get tested the whole year. I mean, we're playing the NFC West, which obviously, if people have been watching football outside of the Chiefs, which I know some people don't, but you're going to be going against the likes of Aaron Donald. You're going to be going against the likes of Nick Bosa if he can stay healthy. You're going to be going against every divisional opponent that we keep facing. So we got Max Crosby. We have Chandler Jones again. We have Bradley Chubb, who's been playing out of his mind in Denver, even though the team absolutely stinks. I mean, we obviously have Khalil Mack coming again. And then everything else that this weekend we got Von Miller. Von Miller's coming to town. And so they're going to be continuously tried. And I think, too, that's where the Chiefs took the stance of like, hey, we know our schedule. We know exactly what we're going to be facing. We want you to prove it because obviously we want to win a Super Bowl. But the thing is, too, man, like I'm right. I'm agree 100% with you. He just hasn't earned it. And maybe he'll take less now that he realizes like, hey, I didn't have a good season. But I know that the Veach and Andy, like, they have a loyalty, and maybe it just played in their favor. And I could see Orlando Brown probably sticking around, but I definitely think that right tackle position gets addressed. I think Andrew Wiley's kind of been a Band-Aid. They kind of hoped that they would address it in this draft with that Kentucky player. He clearly didn't pan out. Lucas Niang hasn't panned out. So I could see that right tackle position definitely being addressed.
Lord have mercy on Orlando Brown Jr. when he has to go up against Aaron Donald. That is a matchup that oh my gosh. We might have to just bench Mahomes for the game. The Rams clearly aren't playing that well this year. Mahomes might just say, you know what? I'm going to take this week off because he could genuinely get hurt. But, getting back to the game to wrap this whole thing up, the Chiefs won this game. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't a game in which they came out of it feeling like, oh, we just dominated this team. But the Chiefs always find a way to do just enough. The Chiefs were able to rally back down from 17. They came roaring back. Patrick Mahomes did Patrick Mahomes things. He nearly had 300 yards passing, and he had 4 touchdown passes, all of which went to Travis Kelce. This is all stuff that is encouraging. We saw more of the wide receivers get involved, like Marquez Valdes-Scantling had a really good game. Mecole had a little bit of a better game than what we've seen in the past. And defensively, I think that we saw guys step up like Jalen Watson. Chris Jones, even if he did get called for the roughing the passer, he was a menace all game long. They were able to come up clutch when the game really was on the line on that 4th and 1, which they were able to stop the Raiders, and also on that 2-point conversion. They did just enough. Obviously, there's a lot of work to do and to get better. But as a Chiefs fan, you got to be feeling really good about the position the Chiefs are in right now, because the Chiefs are 4-1 and the Raiders are 1-4. And right now, if they can keep this up, the AFC West is still their division, and they proved that last night by winning this game. It wasn't pretty, but great teams find a way to win ugly, and the Chiefs did that last night. So, Lucas, do you have anything to add in closing?
Man, I appreciate you having me on. As always, this is always a good time. Make sure you guys are listening to Michael. I know a lot of people in the chat are for sure. But, again, I appreciate you having me on, man. I'm looking forward to this Bills game.
Me too. I'll be there, which, by the way, I looked it up. The tickets for that game, nosebleeds, is like $700.
Crazy.
Absurd. Thank God I'm an employee, because I would not be paying to go to that game. That's a paycheck and more. Oh, man. But, Lucas, where can people find you?
Guys, head over to the Beat of KC on Twitter. I've been writing and covering a lot for the Kansas Jayhawks football team, and we're getting ready for basketball season, so I'll be doing that as well. So head over there, and if you're interested in KU, get some information.
Jayhawks are 5-1. And by the way, Lucas, have you seen that whole thing about Jalen Daniels being out for the season, but he's not out for the season, and he tweeted about it?
Yeah, man, that's a whole kind of screwy situation. Yeah, I'm intrigued to see how that continues to play out, because, yeah, that it's very interesting how they approach that.
Yeah, it will be interesting for sure. Guys, go check out all the stuff that Lucas just mentioned. He's killing it. As for me, you can follow me on Instagram. That's KC_Sports Report. Twitter is @KC Sports Report. Go check out the website. That is kcsportsreport.com. Shout out to all of the viewers of this live stream, specifically Brandon Rogers and Bill Bond. Also, thanks to Chiefs in the 6, I believe that is, or maybe it's Clutch. Thanks to everybody for watching. If you like these post-game live streams, go ahead and like and subscribe for more. Until next time, guys, thank you for watching this video. The Chiefs were able to beat the Raiders on Monday Night Football by a final score of 30-29. And until next time, guys, thank you for watching this video, and go Chiefs.